Hi, guys. Welcome to the Simple Doesn't Mean Easy podcast. We're here Mondays and Fridays working at simplifying things in our lives, one day at a time, one simple step at a time. I'm your host, Michelle Visser. And today, the thing that we're simplifying is drinks, summer drinks. And what are some great choices and why there are a lot that we should avoid? I think you're going to love this episode because Marlena Schnyder is back with us. She was on the show years ago. I'll actually link to that episode in the show notes. And I brought her back because she is like the connoisseur of all things related to tea. And if I ever have a tea question, she is the lady I go to. Marlena is the Director of Operations for Fresh Roasted Coffee, Positively Tea, and Positively Botanicals. She has been in the specialty beverage industry for well over a decade, and she continued her education with the Specialty Tea Institute, which was the first accredited standardized tea education curriculum in our country. Chances are, if you have a coffee or tea question, Marlena has tasted it, tested it, roasted it, or blended it. Marlena, I'm so glad that you could join us today.
Thank you for having me back. I'm excited to be here.
Of course, it was so much fun long ago. I will link in the show notes the last episode when you came on and we talked all things tea.
Yes, we did.
And since then, there's now actually Positively Botanicals as well,
Yes.
along with
Yep.
Fresh Roasted Coffee and Positively Tea.
Yep. We
Actually,
launched like
you
a
are the
subdivision.
okay, yes. And I love it because they combine so
Hmm.
well. I love adding some of the botanical medicinal things to my teas. So but I really wanted you to come on today because, especially now, it being summertime and all of us needing to have some really good drinks available at all times.
Nice and
And the
cold for
fact,
this week.
yes, yes, absolutely. It's so hot, even here
It's
in New
so hot.
England. I'm sure down in Pennsylvania it's worse than New England.
Crazy, crazy hot.
Yes, it is. And it's so important to keep hydrated, of course, but then there's so many bad options out there. I mean,
True.
there's so many drinks that have the artificial flavors and the artificial
Hmm.
colors and the high
Hmm.
fructose corn syrup. And then, okay, maybe I'm late to the game, but I just heard something the other day, and I'm not saying this is actually true, but I heard somebody talking about Celsius energy drinks and
Hmm.
that there's been maybe something like biosludge seen in them. Like, I'm like, what?
My
So
gosh.
the kind of things that you hear, it really scares you sometimes. And it really
For
makes you
sure.
want to think about where am I sourcing my food and my drinks? And what can I know about, them to make sure I'm choosing good options. So that's why you're here to
Absolutely.
help us work through the
Yay.
good
Of
options.
course. We have some good options.
Awesome.
They
Well,
do
I was
exist.
really excited that because I know you, oh my goodness, you know all the teas,
Yes,
so
I
you
do.
can you can fill us in on everything.
You
So
bet.
let's start with what are some great reasons to choose organic teas and coffees? Why is that a good place to go for a drink?
To start is high antioxidant content. I mean, antioxidants help to fight off free radicals in the body, helps your immune system, helps your body recover faster. So anything with high natural antioxidant content is going to be a great choice. Coffee and tea both have high natural antioxidant content. So it's a good, easy way to help to reduce inflammation and all those amazing things that antioxidants do.
Mhm.
Green tea specifically has EGCG, which is a polyphenol, and that helps to kind of stabilize energy throughout the day, and it avoids that sort of crash that you get with sometimes
Yes.
those other energy drinks like a Celsius, like a Red Bull, like
Yes.
something that has like a ton of caffeine up front, and then you
Yeah.
start to
You feel
feel
great and then all
right.
of a sudden you do not.
Yep, you're unstoppable,
Yeah.
and then 3 p.m. hits, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I can't handle
Yes.
this." So,
Yes.
it's like a sustained form of energy from that antioxidant content, those polyphenols. So,
I love
antioxidant
it. So
content,
matcha is it matcha or matcha?
matcha.
Matcha.
Mhm.
Matcha's even higher in it than
It
typical green
is
tea, right?
correct.
Okay,
You're
so
consuming the entire leaf when you're consuming matcha. So,
okay.
they finally mill it into a powder. It depends, some of the grades are different. There's like a culinary grade, and then there's more high end, really finely milled grades like ceremonial grade matcha. But since you're consuming that entire tea leaf, you're getting all of those nutrients because it's not getting steeped out,
Gotcha.
it's not getting caught in a filter, that kind of thing.
Gotcha. So I find that that is perfect for that 2 o'clock time that
Yeah.
I'm in a slump and I need to get work done.
Yep.
I look for the matcha. So What would happen if you took green tea leaves? I've actually never thought about this, and it's probably a stupid question, but what if you grind just regular old green tea leaves really, really finely? It's still not going to dissolve, is it?
They would have to be really dried down. I don't
Okay.
know if you would dehydrate them, if that's how you would be able to achieve that. But those matcha mills, I mean, they've been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. So
Yes.
they're the way they're able to mill them so fine. They get the vibrant green color. That is just green tea leaves. That's all that's in there. So there's
Hmm.
no extra. That color is really just coming from the plant itself, which is really cool.
It is, and it's such a
Yeah,
gorgeous
it's
color. That
beautiful.
alone makes me happy.
I
Now,
know.
what's the difference in ceremonial and the other matcha?
So there's a bunch of different grades. Different companies will have different levels that you can kind of choose from. Culinary grade is like, or cafe grade is less finely milled, so it has like a little more of a clump to it. But a lot of people use it for like matcha lattes because that doesn't really, when you're mixing things in with the matcha, it doesn't really require it to be as finely milled as if you were whisking it just by itself. So Japanese ceremonial grade matcha is going to be at a higher price point. It's going to be extremely finely milled. You're not really even going to have to sift it. A lot of people will sift through some of those clumps that can be in the matcha.
Yeah.
And then you're just whisking that with hot water into a gaiwan or like a little cup or something. And then you're consuming it. But when you're talking about culinary grade, you can blend that into smoothies, lattes, that kind of stuff. So it
Okay.
doesn't really
Okay.
need to be as finely milled because you're blending it in.
Okay. So it's really just the fineness of
Yep,
the two
it's
different,
usually the fineness, the
but the
the
nutritional
quality of the green
quality.
tea. It can
Okay.
it can be dependent on quality as well of the green tea.
Okay.
Usually, it's a lesser grade green tea in the culinary grade, but you're still getting that full content of all of those antioxidants because you're consuming whole plants. So you can't really go wrong. It just
Yeah.
really depends on how you plan to consume
Okay. Yeah, I love that. The fact that
it.
you're literally just eating the plant or drinking the
Yep.
plant. Like that's why I love to use stevia leaves to
Hmm.
sweeten my tea because it's so
Yep.
amazing that you get that sweetness and there's nothing man-made, nothing
Right.
artificial. It's not even a sugar. Like
Right.
hello.
It's
So I
just
love it.
tasty.
Okay. So we were saying that we need I'm sorry, what'd you say?
It's just tasty.
Oh, it is
Stevia.
tasty, yes.
Mhm.
I didn't wanna miss anything important about stevia that I needed to know.
Mhm.
So we were saying how it's really important to have some cold iced tea around. Help us understand, are there better teas for cold versus hot, or is it just a personal preference really? Like, how do you choose?
It really is a personal preference. You can cold brew anything. You can brew anything over ice. But when you're talking about like, so people always are looking for that classic black tea flavor, like iced tea you would get in jug at the store. People are always searching for that flavor at the base of sweet tea, iced tea that people are most familiar with. That's usually traditionally a blend of Indian black teas.
Mhm.
All the big companies that have been around for forever, they're kind of using sort of a blend of Indian, more basic grade black teas.
Yes, and I'll
Again,
let the
you can
listeners in
use
on a secret that I will put in the show notes, a link to my recipe using 2 of your amazing teas, Assam and Nilgiri.
Nigiri. Yes.
And
Okay.
so
So you
Nilgiri, I
already
say it
Nigiri.
wrong. Okay,
That's okay. You
Nilgiri.
you
Okay.
already have. That's the secret sauce. That is the secret
Yeah,
sauce.
it
That is the classic
is.
black tea iced tea blend. You're going to get that store bought taste. You're going to get that, but that obviously because you're making it yourself and you're not adding any crud to it. But
Yes.
that's the secret sauce right there,
Yeah.
for
So
sure.
that'll be in the show notes, everybody, because it's
Perfect.
my husband, Bill. It's his absolute favorite sweet iced tea. It has replaced Lipton in our house long ago. We don't
Hmm.
need, I haven't bought Lipton in probably 6 or 7 years when I
Yeah, you
discovered
don't need to.
just blending. I know. So,
That's what they're
okay.
doing. That's what they're doing.
Yes, exactly. But I can have it organic and no tea
Yes,
bag and all that stuff. So, okay.
absolutely.
So go on. Tell us more.
Um, so if we're talking about iced tea, it's good to know that there's like two ways to brew it. What I like to do is make more of a concentrate. It's the same thing with coffee. So if you're making iced coffee versus cold brew, the same stands for tea. When you're making a cold brew, you're really making sort of like a concentrate. So you're brewing with more tea than you would normally brew with, usually a little bit less water, and you make a really, really heavy duty concentrate of that. And then once it is completely cold, you brew that, or you can brew it over ice. It doesn't really matter. But when people end up getting cloudy iced tea, now this is a big thing when people are trying to make iced tea or cold brew or something like that. They're like, oh, it got really cloudy. Am I okay to drink that? You know, what's going on there? And that's usually because the tea hasn't been cooled down enough before you add ice or really cold water. So it's important if you
Okay.
do brew it to let that really, really come down to room temp or even lower before you add extra ice water
Hmm.
to
That's good
make
to
your
know because a
concentrate
long
stronger.
time ago, my mother in law, actually, I think she still has it, had one of those. I don't know what the name brand is, but those tea makers.
Yeah.
And it like publicizes that as soon as it's brewed, you put the ice in and it has a little
Mm-hmm.
line on it as to where you
Mm-hmm.
put your ice. So you're saying that's not the right way to do it. That's
Not
interesting.
if it's too hot. Yep, you're going to get
Okay.
cloudy tea. It can kind of mess with the flavor a little bit. Obviously, you want this beautiful, clear tea to put in a pretty pitcher or something if you're
Of
having a
course.
party, or
Yeah.
you want it to look nice. So you want to avoid that cloudiness. Just make sure that the tea is cooled sufficiently.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to pause this episode for a minute because I have a question for you. What's for dinner tonight? Are you maybe putting some steaks on the grill? Maybe you're grilling some hamburgers. It is that time of year, yes? But my follow up question for you, if your meal involves meat of any kind, actually, is do you happen to know what that animal was fed? Do you happen to know what its living conditions were? I know that that is not something we can always know about our food, but whenever possible, I love to be able to know it. And I'll tell you why. Because feedlot cows are fed a low quality grain and corn diet. Cows aren't meant to eat corn. So they have to be actually given preventative medicines before they even get sick or they will be sick. And do you think that the poor diet and all the medicines that they're given impact the quality of the meat that we then turn around and feed our family? Absolutely. So I wanted to make sure that I introduce you to the real family because they do things differently on the real ranch. They choose to raise a healthy cow from the start. And they do it in a regenerative way that's good for the land, good for the cows, and very good for your family's dinner table. So please go to soulyrested.com/beef and check out that special offer that they have for you. And you also can dive into some beef shares. You can actually get a whole cow as a beef share if you would like and have your freezer filled for the next year with amazing food. But you can also get a mini share, or like I said, try out the special sample box that they have waiting for you. And guess what, guys? You don't even have to pay shipping. So go to soulyrested.com/beef. Okay, so how do we choose? I mean, do you give any recommendations aside from the fact that it really is personal preference? Do you have recommendations of, well, this is great teas to use for cold and this is really great ones to use for hot? Is there any way to distinguish?
Mm. No, it really
No.
does come
Okay.
down to personal preference. I mean, I like an iced rooibos. I like an iced hibiscus tea. Stuff that you can oversteep is usually safer for iced tea because if you plan on
Mm,
brewing it for a really long time or steeping it for a really long time,
that's a
you
really
want
good point.
something that's not going to get bitter. Anything with a really high tannin content is going to, it can turn. So green tea and black tea can get funky if you let them steep for too long. Everybody, has walked away from a tea bag and has come back and shoot, this is
Yep.
now oversteeped, oversaturated, and too
Yep.
strong. And it kind of muddles the flavor up pretty bad. So teas like
Are there
rooibos,
any of those options that you can do a cold brew that it doesn't get bitter? Or does a cold brew different? Does it not get bitter in a cold brew?
it depends.
Okay.
Some of them can over extract. Anything with like a citrus oil can very easily over extract. So flavored
Oh,
citrus teas tend to over
okay.
extract just based on the flavoring. We've run into that issue before, but if you're using hot water at all, if you brew hot and then pour over ice once it's cooled, I suggest using something that's not going to get too oversaturated. So that's where your black teas and your green teas can get oversaturated. If you're using herbal tea, you're not going to run into that because they don't oversteep. They don't have that bitterness to them. Cold brew can get kind of nasty, but only if you really leave it for like way, way, way too long. 12 to 24
Okay.
hours is like, you don't want to leave it any longer than that.
Okay.
But cold brew tends to keep things less bitter. And you can
Okay.
also dilute because you're making a concentrate.
Yes, I love that. I know when I'm making kombucha, I will often use rooibos from you guys and
Mm-hmm.
some white tea, some green tea, and of course
Mm-hmm.
some of the Assam. And I will always make a concentrate with that, and it can keep in
Yep,
my refrigerator for 6 to 8 weeks, and it makes it so
absolutely.
much easier when it's time to rebottle kombucha. That there's my concentrate. So, concentrate is the way to go.
Yeah, with
Also,
with
just
iced coffee too. I mean, it's great to be able to just use a little bit because
yes,
you said it lasts so long. It keeps so great in the fridge. Cold brew concentrate.
yes.
You just take it out. You add milk or you add water and ice, and then I mean, you have that strength.
Yes.
So you're not watering anything.
Yes, for sure. Although on the other hand, just last night I took some very berry citrus. I
Mm,
love
the
that tea.
best.
And I added just a little bit of stevia because I like it extra sweet.
Mhm,
And I think I put 2.5-ish tablespoonfuls in a quart size strainer and filled it with cold water and just let it
mhm.
sit on my counter. And then this morning, all I did was pull the strainer out, add some ice cubes, and I had my
You're good to
drink ready.
go.
So it can go both ways too.
It
There's
absolutely
nothing
can.
wrong with that.
No,
Yeah.
definitely there's going to be some experimentation when you're cold brewing and making concentrates and all that stuff. So I don't want people to be discouraged if something
Yeah.
does, not turn out right away. Tea can be finicky, coffee less so, but it's important to just kind of stick with, those ratios and not oversteep some of the black and green teas and you'll be fine.
Yeah. And when it comes down to it, it's really fun to experiment, and sometimes
It
you
is.
wind up with something amazing. You're like,
Right.
"Whoa, I think I might have just discovered this," you know?
Absolutely.
So, I love making my own tea blends for this reason that we're talking about right now. And I will buy, the different teas from your guys' company because
Mhm.
I go nowhere else anymore, honestly, because I
Thank
love the
you.
fact I mean, it's true. I love the fact that I can totally trust. I know how you guys are being the watchdogs of our tea,
We are. We're
And I
certainly
know I
trying.
can yeah, and there's so many things in my day that I have to be a watchdog over when it comes to my food and everything else, and if I can know a company that I can trust, then I am all in. So, I've bought nothing else for a very long time other than Positively Teas, but I will use them to make my own combinations.
Yep,
Sometimes I love things like your combos, and sometimes I want to create my own.
of
So
course.
help us for anybody listening who wants to experiment with that. Since you are the absolute tea expert that I know, can you help us understand how to kind of combine different teas to get a good flavor profile? Where do you start if somebody's never done that and they want to try?
So when I went through the Specialty Tea Institute educational program, there's kind of like a three-piece method to blending. Again, this is something that requires a lot of experimentation, but you really can't go wrong. So your base is going to be like 1 to 2 parts. So that's like a black tea base, or you could use, I mean, chamomile, tulsi, anything that kind of doesn't have, you don't want something with a super overpowering flavor on its own. Because those supporting ingredients are going to kind of layer those flavors in. So you want something, if you want caffeine, make sure you choose a caffeinated base. If you want something to give you an energy boost, if you want something that maybe you can drink throughout the day, an herbal base is really good. And there's plenty of things that you can play with. And then supporting ingredients, that's going to be like 1 to 2 parts. And for those, I have lemon balm, lemon myrtle, rose hips, hibiscus, stevia, something that's going to enhance the flavor. And obviously, you can use ingredients that are you brewing for sort of function or flavor or both. You can obviously do both too. And then what they call accent ingredients, which is going to be like a quarter of the blend, if that. And good suggestions for that, like cinnamon sticks or citrus zest, and lavender, rose petals, something that you can sprinkle in where you just get sort of a hint of the flavor, and not overpower the rest of the blend. So 3 parts base, 1 to 2 parts supporting ingredients, and then a quarter of those accent ingredients. And that's kind of your pyramid for blending.
Okay. Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Um, so many things have crossed my mind as you're talking. First of all, just for the listeners to know, I had a lavender farmer on the podcast a month or two
Wow.
ago. She was fascinating. She
Oh
went
my
on and on.
gosh.
I didn't know there was so much to know about lavender,
Lavender is
but
amazing.
it is, and she sent me some lavender pepper and
Oh,
some lavender sugar, and oh my goodness, so many good I got this amazing package, I was so excited. But the reason I'm bringing this up is if anybody would like some insight about lavender and adding that to your teas, I'll leave that episode linked in the show notes as well.
very cool.
Um, and then I love it too that these accents, like you mentioned, cinnamon, are so and lavender are so medicinal. Probably
Mhm.
everything you mentioned, actually. And then the second part, so you had your base. What'd you call your second part? Your 1 to
Supporting
2?
ingredients.
The supporting ingredients.
Mhm.
So many of those, if not all of them, were medicinal. I know you
Right.
mentioned lemon balm,
Yep.
and rose hips. Can you tell me lemon balm? I actually make a tincture with it and I grow
Mhm.
it, but I have not put it in teas. So I would love to know what flavor profile would you say it has? What should I
It's
be adding it to?
zesty. It's zesty.
Zesty.
It's similar to, what you would expect. It's like mint and lemon honey. That's how I would kind of describe it as.
Oh,
It's a little
okay.
minty and a little zesty.
So it's great
Um,
for tea then. I
yes,
gotta
no,
be
it's
using that.
amazing as tea.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. I use it for a tincture because it's so good for a lot of medicinal reasons, but it would be
Mhm.
really good in my tea for the same reasons.
People like it before
Wow.
bed too.
Okay. Yeah, it is very calming. Yes. Um, and then rose hips and hibiscus, they're both pretty powering flavors. Yes, no?
Pretty strong. Yep. Rose hips, if they're steeped and they're whole, they're a little bit less. If you get like a rose hip powder or something, they can be really
Oh,
punchy, really tart. They have kind of like a tart cranberry flavor,
okay.
similar to hibiscus. Has that super, like, if you like a tart, I love a tart flavor profile. I'm always
Hmm.
interested in things that, like, give you
Yeah.
that pucker.
Yeah.
But rose hips are great for that too. And I mean, that's vitamin C all day, every day. You can't go wrong.
Absolutely, for sure. So if it's a powder though, I'm not gonna add that into my tea blend, right? Because it's not gonna mix in correctly.
It
It's
wouldn't
not
mix in. Yeah,
yeah.
some of the rose hip. We do whole rose hips, like cut and sifted, where you can steep them in. But a lot of people do also have rose hip powder, and a lot of people put those in smoothies and yogurt, that kind of stuff.
Okay. I really need to put together a resource for myself and for my listeners, and maybe I can like call on you to help me.
Sure.
I would like to really list out what you're telling me and
You
really
bet.
even, explain which ones are medicinal and explain how you choose which ones. Cause even though I've
Yeah.
been doing this for years, Marlena, like just throwing together things I like and see what tastes good, I don't really know what I'm doing, if you know what I mean.
Right. I
Like people think I
truthfully,
do, but
no, it's all about experimenting, and once you
yeah.
have a good grip and kind of a baseline of what things are good for, like, you wouldn't want an yerba mate blend at the end of the day. It's like, because that
Right,
has
right.
caffeine, or
For
you
sure.
wouldn't want, maybe a lavender chamomile in the morning because that's uber relaxing. You're like, no, 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 I want to wake up. And
Yeah.
so it's definitely like dependent on those types of things. But in terms of kind of mixing and matching, I mean, it's you can do whatever you want. It's the fun.
It really is.
Mhm.
And I love too that you have the option, and I do it both ways. You can, once you find a blend you really love, pre-mix it. Have it ready in a quart
Absolutely.
jar so you can get a tablespoon at a time and it's ready. But then I also like keeping the different things separately. Now I need to add lemon balm to that. And I know, which herbs have, like you said, the different properties. And if it's a nighttime cup of tea, I can toss in some lemon balm, or
Yep.
anytime I can toss in some red clover because that has great medicinal
I love
values
red
as
clover.
somebody
Yep.
in menopause. And a lot of these things don't even like red clover, don't really add a lot of flavor even. So
No,
why not
hardly any.
toss in
It's
the
like
medicinal? Yeah.
very lightly sweet. A lot of the skin care and skin teas have red clover, because it can be like antibacterial and antimicrobial. So
Yes.
um, you can, that helps your skin. Like a glowy skin tea. A lot of those have the red clover blossom in them. So it's
Yes.
a good stuff.
Yes. Yeah. And so many things like red clover and yarrow, I can literally even forage for. I can
Right.
go on a walk down a dirt road and I can collect both of those things. But what I love about Positively Botanicals is year round, I can also get some red
Very
clover.
true.
So I don't have to worry about running out.
Right.
Um, So I love that you guys added that third brand onto
Yeah, I
your
mean, people were
overall.
asking for it for so many years, and while I'm not an herbalist, and I'm not a doctor, there are things that I've struggled with my own health personally. That my mom was always into a really good balance of traditional and sort of non-traditional
Hmm.
ways to better your health. So there was always a
Yeah.
really good balance in my house growing up. So when I started doing the buying for our company, there was a lot of things that people would ask for and things that I wanted personally. It's like, oh, I use these herbs every day, or I want to incorporate these herbs into my routine. What's a really good way that we can do it so other people can easily incorporate them? And the easiest way is tea bags.
Yeah.
It's so easy. It's so easy. Now we have some of our raspberry leaf and I believe milk thistle in pods too, so people
Hmm.
can brew them in their Keurig.
Yeah.
Just easy ways to incorporate them if you make these things accessible. And you're not taking like a million pills. Like I love supplements, but at the same time, nobody wants to take like 17
Yeah.
horse pills in the morning. So it's nice to be able to do it like this. Like this tastes good and I
Absolutely.
can drink it throughout the
Absolutely.
day and then I can get those great herbs in.
Absolutely. I'm like totally old fashioned though. I don't have any pods and I don't even bother with the tea
Hmm.
bags. I just love my steepers. I just have my couple
Yeah.
stainless steel steepers and that's
Listen,
all you really
whatever
need.
works. Whatever
Yeah.
works.
Yeah. So, okay, let's talk latte and matcha because
Okay.
it's something I'm not a fancy coffee shop kind of person. So I
Hmm.
was hoping maybe there's probably some listeners that aren't as well, and maybe you can break down for us the difference and what those involve.
Sure. So if you're talking a latte, it's basically a base of espresso and then steamed milk and foamed milk on top. Lattes usually incorporate some sort of flavor, although you can have them without. So people will also do like shots of flavor in them. And traditionally, lattes are mixed, so those layers aren't so separated.
Okay.
So if you're talking about a tea latte, one really popular one is a London,
Mm.
and people use a base of Earl Grey or an Earl Grey cream, and do like a really strong. Now, obviously, you can't do a shot of tea like you would do a shot of espresso. So people either brew a tea bag or two to make it really strong, and then you add the steamed milk and the foamed milk on top. So that would
Okay. So
be
you
a
don't have
tea
to have an
latte.
espresso machine. Okay.
Absolutely not. Yeah. If you're
Okay.
making lattes with coffee, yes. But if you're making tea lattes, absolutely not. You can just use
Okay.
your tea bag or steep in one of your strainers. I tend to like it a little bit stronger, so I would use like two tea bags if I was doing it. But yeah, and then you layer
Okay.
that steamed milk and foamed milk on top. And then you have a latte. And usually they're
Okay.
mixed. So if you're talking like a cappuccino, that's less steamed milk and they're very layered. You don't mix. So
Okay.
that's the difference kind of between a latte and a cappuccino. They're the most similar, but those are the differences.
Okay. Okay. And I'm assuming, probably a ridiculous question, you can't get either of these caffeine free.
If you use decaf espresso, you absolutely could. If you use
Oh.
a decaf tea base, absolutely. Yeah. We
Oh.
have
Okay.
CO2. We have CO2 decaffeinated black tea here. An English breakfast. We have a decaf English breakfast that doesn't use any
Yes.
chemical decaffeination. So if you wanted a decaf option, or you could just use an herbal tea. So
Hmm.
I
Okay.
the Starbucks refresher, the pink drink, is just herbal tea and milk. That's all they're doing. So if
Oh.
you want that amazing pink drink,
Ooh.
you could do that with our very berry
The berry
citrus or
berry citrus.
our cocoa berry mango and
Yeah.
coconut milk and a little bit of stevia, and you've got yourself a pink drink. It's the same
Yeah, I
thing.
love the cocoa berry mango. That would be
Hmm.
amazing.
It's great
What
for
ratio
summer.
would you off the top of your head recommend? Half and half?
You would want a little more tea than you would milk, or it's going to be super
Okay.
milky. So
Okay.
maybe 2 to 1,
And
somewhere in
did you
there.
say you just mix it like with a straw, mix it, or do
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
Okay.
Usually, I mean, people, you can drink them unlayered, but if you get, I don't know, if you get a drink from a drive-through, a lot of people will shake them up. That's how they're traditionally meant to be enjoyed, because it helps to, if you take a sip from the bottom, you're just going to get all tea, and then
Right.
once you finish that, you're going to get all milk. So people like to mix them
Right.
up, and then you get both.
Okay. Okay. Wow.
So
I
you can
never
make a
even
tea
thought
latte
about.
with anything. Chai
Yeah.
lattes, so good. Like a spicy chai latte, like at in the colder months, I really like them iced chai. People will do what they call a dirty chai, which is a chai latte. So you would brew a chai like or maybe our toasty mate or our masala chai, and then you would do a strong base of tea and then steamed milk and foamed milk on top. Then you have a chai latte.
Mm.
If you want to make it dirty, you add a shot of espresso. Then you have a dirty chai latte.
Mm.
And again, those have caffeine, so you would have to look
Right.
for. You could use our rooibos chocolate chai if you wanted a decaf option. You can do anything you want.
Hmm. I haven't tried rooibos chocolate chai. I didn't
That
even know
one's
about
very
that
good.
one.
That one actually
Wow.
has chocolate chips in it that melt when you brew the tea.
Oh my goodness. And the chocolate chips are organic?
They are. Yep.
Wow. Um, okay, so you said something that I actually didn't know because I'm not a tea expert. So decaf tea is
Hmm.
actually chemically altered typically?
Chemically altered, typically, yes.
So tell me
Um,
about that.
So with we can use coffee as an example. Traditional, what they call MC decaf, which is what you get most places, unless they specify otherwise, is methyl chloride. Methyl chloride is a cousin of formaldehyde.
Oh,
Nasty stuff. Now, when there's acceptable levels in food, obviously what you're drinking is acceptable. But if you're trying to limit chemicals in your daily life,
which would be
eliminating
nice.
eliminating that MC decaf would be great. So tea also
Huh.
uses chemical methods of decaffeination as well. Traditionally, if you're not buying an herbal tea and something says decaffeinated, you want to check if you can with the company. There is the option to use CO2 to decaffeinate. With coffee, there's an option to use water to decaffeinate. So we offer water processed and sugarcane processed decaf coffees, and we offer CO2 decaffeinated teas. So it's a non-chemical process. All of those limits are within the USDA's regulations for like acceptable processing aids for organic product. You're not running into chemicals. You're using natural things to decaffeinate. So we
Wow.
only offer CO2 decaf,
So here people are out there choosing decaf for health reasons,
of
medical
course.
reasons, whatever the
Yep.
case. And if they're like me, they're not even realizing that
Yeah.
they have a chemically processed drink.
There are better ways. There are better ways out
Wow.
there. And when it comes to sourcing, obviously we're cognizant of price point for people. We want all of these things to be acceptable. They are a little more expensive, but not by what you would think. So it's crazy
Yeah,
to me that most companies aren't like, hey, we'll just spend a little extra, and have this
I
option
know.
available,
But there's
when
always
it
that
should be
profit
the standard.
margin.
Of
They have
course,
to have that profit
of
margin
course.
in line and they won't do it otherwise. Actually, just a few weeks ago, I had someone on who worked for Pfizer as a
Mm.
sales rep for Pfizer. And she was really
Wow.
getting down nitty and gritty talking about this, how everything is a trail that comes back to profit. That's just the fact. And
Yeah.
even when it comes to things like companies like Pfizer, of course, that is what they're there for profit. So, okay, I'm going on a way off on a tangent there. I'm forgetting now what I was going to ask you. We were
Yeah, but it's
talking
good to
about
know that those
this.
options do exist, and they are available. And if you're curious as to what the places you're buying from, how they're decaffeinating their product, what processing aids they're using, the only processing aid we use here is nitrogen,
Hmm.
which is totally safe, obviously, and that just extends shelf life and helps to keep product really fresh. So when you're opening a bag, you're not getting stale beans
Okay.
or stale. Um, K cups or something like that.
Hmm.
But people use processing aids, who knows what they're putting in it. So
I
um,
know.
it's good to
I
know.
know.
And if a company isn't willing to disclose and say, this is how we're decaffeinating, like ours says it right on our label, CO2 decaffeinated. And for coffee, it always will say water decaffeinated or sugarcane decaffeinated.
Hmm.
So they should tell
Okay.
you.
Okay.
You shouldn't be
Yeah.
afraid to ask.
And if they're not able to tell you, then you really should look for a different
Then
company,
you've got a
honestly.
big problem. Yeah,
Yeah.
because that's a buyer and a supply chain that is trustworthy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to come back to what you were hinting out there about storage and what we
Mhm.
were talking about it does cost a little bit more. And that actually falls in line with a couple questions I have from some Instagram followers.
Yeah.
So before we get into that, though, I don't want to forget we did not yet cover what matcha entails. If you could tell me
Okay.
a little bit more about that.
So like we said, matcha is going to be a powdered form of green tea. L-theanine is one of those big components, so that's an amino acid that is mostly from that polyphenol content. So you're consuming the whole leaf.
Hmm.
So it is a higher caffeine content usually because you're not steeping it. So steeping takes a lot of things out of a
Hmm.
product. And so the longer you steep, it depends. You could be getting a stronger dose, but it also things get caught in a filter. So like tea bag filtering can take some of those things out. When you're consuming matcha, you're literally consuming the whole product blended in with
Right.
water or milk. So you're getting all of those nutrients as like a direct hit right to the system. Um,
Yeah. So tell us how to drink it. You said water or milk.
Water or milk. Um, in a traditional sense, matcha is used like a little spoonful. They make like matcha spoons that dose them perfectly, but you can just use the amount that you're looking for. Now, people do. I have seen people, and I've had friends that have like taken too much matcha, and then you will get a bellyache because it's just way too much caffeine.
Oh,
People don't realize how much
okay.
more caffeine is in it than regular.
Okay.
Tea. Like you wouldn't eat instant coffee,
Yeah.
so you shouldn't eat definitely don't load up on the matcha, but just yeah, a little bit in water. There are things called matcha whisks, which are usually made of bamboo traditionally, and then you would whisk them around until the matcha has foamy peaks and bubbles, and then you
Hmm.
can sip it. But a lot of other people put it in baked goods, yogurt, smoothies, however you want to take it in, or you can blend it in with milk or something like that. It should dissolve up very evenly, especially if you've got a good grade of matcha, which we sell, and
Right.
those but anything between cafe and culinary grade and like the more premium grades are going to dissolve really easily into liquid. So you
Hmm.
just kind of mix it together and
Yeah. I'm pausing this episode really quickly to ask you if you are in need of some delicious, refreshing summer drinks. Are you tired of the same old, same old? And are you tired of it being so hard to find a healthy drink option that you love because they have artificial flavors, artificial colors, all that refined sugar that you do not need? I have a solution for you. Go to solelyrested.com/summer drink. I think you're going to love what I have brewing for you there. I'm going to be adding to it all summer long, and I'm going to be sharing lots of recipes that you can use only the best ingredients. You can save so much money by making these drinks yourself. And, well, I even have a discount code waiting for you on my absolute favorite teas that I will use in all different ways in all of these different drinks. So go check out solelyrested.com/summer drink, grab that discount code, and start diving into these delicious recipes. solelyrested.com/summer drink. I think you're going to find it deliciously refreshing. Yeah. Okay. I will
and your
often
teeth
just
won't
mix it into
stain.
water. And you're what?
Your teeth don't get stained like it
Oh,
does with coffee.
yes.
So that's another
Yes.
reason people like
Yes.
matcha is you
That's
need
a
a
good point.
caffeine hit and then you're not getting stained teeth.
That is a very good
I'm
point.
constantly
And
whitening my teeth working here with all the
yes.
coffee that I
Yes.
have to drink. So that is
Yes.
like, oh, I should just drink matcha and then I won't have to worry about it.
So I just put a little bit of matcha in water in the afternoon, and I will
Mhm.
just use a little frother, like a little electric handheld
Yeah, a milk
frother.
frother is perfect
Yeah,
too.
exactly. And then I'll add a little bit of lemon often, and
Yeah,
that's my pick me up.
yeah,
Okay. So a few questions for you before we go
sure.
today. One follower asked, aren't there metals in black tea that we shouldn't be drinking?
Yes. Short answer, yes.
Okay.
Um, so there's sort of a holistic view of heavy metals and also trace minerals. So there's trace minerals in all tea, organic, non-organic, wherever in the world
Okay.
you got it.
Hmm.
You have to think. those heavy metals and those pollutants are coming from rain, they're coming from atmosphere, they're coming from soil, they're coming from runoff, they're coming from um, those environmental factors that if you're gardening, you can't really avoid.
Right.
No matter where you are in the world, no matter how rigorous and strict you are with your standards, those sort of things exist in the world. So tea is going to have trace amounts of both. So like zinc, magnesium, manganese, like those are some of the good trace minerals, and those are going to be in tea as well. The
Mm-hmm.
scary ones are like aluminum, lead, mercury, the ones that we should be concerned about. And as buyers and consumers, you have the right to say, hey, were these tested for heavy metals? So
Right.
if you're talking to a company um, and you have a good supplier, what you
Mm-hmm.
usually get is something called a COA, which is the certificate of analysis. Um, and when I buy and source tea lots, it's a requirement on our end to get that COA, because then the heavy metal testing is in there. They also test for microbial count, all kinds of stuff. Um, that we can see, we have documentation of, like, hey, these farmers and these suppliers and these lots have been tested and they are safe
Okay.
to consume.
Okay.
Now, when I meant like a holistic view, people are like, oh, well, there's, in Chinese black tea, there's definitely lead and all of these dangerous heavy metals. Um, it can be true, and it doesn't, depend on if you farmed organically or not. Organic is always better no matter what, because there is no pesticides, fungicides, insecticides, herbicides. That soil cannot have been treated by any chemical pollutants even before the first harvest. So there's no shot, if this is certified USDA organic and these people continue and keep up with their certification, that any of those chemicals are used. So that limits the amount of pollutants in the product no matter what. So organic is always best. Fair trade
Okay.
and some of those other certifications don't really get into that. That's more from like an ethical standpoint. So when you're talking about actual safety, USDA organic is always going to be better no matter what. But you have to take into consideration, are you testing the water that you're brewing in? Are you brewing in Nana's
Good
old teapot
point.
from the 60s that
Good
you love and
point.
you can't get rid of and you're
Yeah.
obsessed with, but who knows what it was made of?
Yeah.
Um, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
my suggestion is, if you're concerned, good buyers and good suppliers are always going to have COAs. They're always going to be testing for these things. We have COAs on everything. Lead is the number one thing we test for, and everything is so far under what is considered safe. The
Okay.
EU, Australia, and all over the world has different standards.
Okay.
America is usually the most lax with these standards, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate,
Yeah.
but we have, based on the NOP regulations, everything that we have has been tested for lead and is considered far under the threshold for what is considered.
Okay.
So a company should be able to supply you with that. And if they can't or they won't,
Look
that's
elsewhere.
questionable.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
questionable. So if you
Okay.
ever want to see our COAs, we got
All
them. Don't
right.
worry.
Just reach out.
But yeah, no, it's so interesting, and um, it's something that's not talked about as much. But um, if you are concerned, you have every reason to be concerned, because it is something that exists for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, another question from a follower I found intriguing because I personally have been using sea kelp for quite a while. I'll add it like to smoothies, or I'll put it on maybe my tuna sandwich,
Mm-hmm.
mix it in with eggs sometimes just a little bit because it does have quite a punch for flavor. But I will take sea kelp for like a lot of oral health issues that I was having, and it's helping
Cool.
with like it actually increases your saliva when you reach menopause. You have trouble with dry mouth and other things, and oral health in general, and it keeps your bones strong. So lots of good reasons for sea kelp. I know
Mm-hmm.
this is a long intro to my followers question, but so I knew about sea kelp, but she asked, she saw that you carry Irish sea moss, and she asked, how does that vary from sea kelp?
So they're a little different. Irish sea moss is a red algae, and sea kelp is going to be a brown seaweed.
Okay.
Irish sea moss has a much higher antioxidant content and nutrient content than sea kelp does. But
Oh,
they do vary in some ways. Like a lot of people I know would take sea kelp for the iodine content. So there's a super high iodine
yes.
content in kelp. So people that struggle with thyroid issues, pregnant women who are trying to get their iodine levels up, as long as it's
Yep.
approved by their healthcare practitioner.
And you
It's
just
good for
reminded
that.
me why I first looked into sea kelp because I started using Redmond real salt and they do not have iodine added to their salt. So I was
Right.
looking for a source of iodine. So
So
that you
if
just
you remove
reminded me.
iodine from your diet in some way, like not
Yes.
using iodized salt, or if you're vegan, a
Yeah.
lot of vegans struggle with getting enough
Oh, good
iodine
point.
in their diet.
Okay.
It's a great way to supplement iodine.
Okay.
Obviously, like I said, you have to make sure it doesn't interact with anything you're doing, or if you're
Right.
pregnant or something like that. But
Now, is that
um,
true of Irish sea moss as well? Is it?
the iodine is not as
It's not.
high. It's not.
Okay.
It's an all around, like, I think of the like 106 or 103 is like the number of nutrients that the body needs to survive. Like you have to have
Hmm.
like just that
The
many,
essential nutrients. Yeah.
the essential nutrients. Yeah, I'm gonna miss the number. It's like 106 or something.
Okay.
Sea moss has 92 of those. So it really is like a
Wow.
complete nutritional source. It has so many of those
Wow.
vitamins and minerals that the body needs to survive. It
Hmm.
really, like, it when people talk about superfood or super, whatever, and people throw that word around, this really is. I mean, this has what your body needs to sustain life. So that's pretty cool.
That is very cool. I'm assuming though it does have quite a fishy flavor like the yeah. It's like you're not gonna put it
It's
in a cup of tea, are you?
Nope, it's
Yeah.
briny. A lot of people, the TikTok girlies, have
Mhm.
been making it into gels. So they will use like an
Hmm.
ice cube tray and they'll fill it up and they'll make these little gels that kind of look like Jello shots. It's very funny.
Hmm.
These are like adult Jello shots,
Hmm.
but you are able to just toss them back. They're salty, they're
Okay.
briny. If you're into that
Okay.
sort of thing,
Okay.
but that's a good way to consume them. When you mix it up, it forms a gel. It doesn't dissolve
Oh, okay.
into like something easily drinkable, so it will gel
Mhm.
up. People are using it in face masks, all kinds of things. So, um, yeah,
Interesting.
it's a nutrient and mineral and vitamin powerhouse,
Hmm.
which is why we offer it. And it's so funny
Okay.
because I just some little interesting anecdote. We were sourcing it, and obviously, it comes from Thailand, which it does. But the majority of it is harvested in China.
Hmm.
And for a very long time, all of the organic stuff was coming from Canada. So I was reaching out to different suppliers and trying to find it. Ours comes from China. It is Chinese based. But the organic stuff, we were looking for different suppliers, and our Canadian supplier pretty much said that they're unable to get it anymore because the water temp is too warm
Interesting.
up in
Wow.
Canada. So
Wow.
it is getting more difficult to find and source organically due to the rising ocean temperatures. So
Hmm. Hmm.
hopefully it's something that we can have for many more years. But that was a roadblock we hit when trying to source it and find good ones
Yeah.
for our
Wow.
customers.
Wow. Okay, so I'm on my last question. I just
Sure,
realized I'm looking at my list here and I'm going, wow, our time's almost done. This has been so fun.
it has been fun.
I know we had talked a little bit about cost and how it's always going
Mhm.
to be slightly more cost if you're going for
Of
the really
course.
good stuff and you want the organic. And I think there's quite a few different ways to look at it to overcome that hurdle. And for one
Hmm.
thing, it's partially what's important to you, you know? And
Sure.
for me, I will cut other things out of our budget to make sure that I have high quality of certain things. And I will admit, all of us choose our things, you
Yeah,
know, and we can't be over vigilant about everything. But one of the very first things I chose as my thing because we drink so much of it and because it was just an easy place for me to start was tea. And that's when I
hmm,
first met you long ago because I wanted to improve the quality of our tea. So if that is one thing that's important to your family, if
hmm,
you guys, if your family drinks a lot of tea or coffee, then maybe that's a good place to start to be willing to
absolutely.
spend a little bit more money,
Especially if it's an
and to cut
everyday
something else
thing.
out.
If it's part of your
Exactly.
everyday, like when I look, and again, like looking at stuff sort of
Yep.
you can only do so much, and you can't
Yep.
worship your fears about, what's going into your body. You can
Right.
only really kind of handle one thing at a time. But a really good
Yep.
place to start if you want to clean up your diet and clean up your lifestyle is things that you use. Those are
Absolutely.
that's where to start. So
Yep.
coffee and tea for so many people is something that is consumed every day. There are organic options. There are safe decaf options. There are, all of those things, teas that have been tested and are lead safe, and those types of
Right.
things. So
Right.
if you're willing to spend a little more, we offer bulk packaging. So people spend a fortune on
Well,
tea bags, and you don't have to. You can get a strainer, like you said, and you can
yeah.
make bulk batches, and it's way more cost effective. Or
Yeah.
if you want the convenience of a tea bag, we have that too. If you want the convenience of a pod, we have that too.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, but
so
that's what I
it
was going
just
to get to
depends.
next is the another option is you really can save money. Figure out what's important to you and then figure out how to save money on those things.
Right.
And I realized very quickly that you guys have bulk packaging in general. When I'm looking at teas I'm going to buy, it
Mhm.
costs twice as much as the size that's only a fourth of the size. Does that make
Right.
sense? I'm not good at
Yep.
math. So you get four times as much tea for twice the price if you want to go for the bulk size. So then we come to finally, I'm getting around to my follower's question that she wanted to start buying in bulk for the very reasons we're
Mhm.
talking. But she was concerned, does the flavor of the tea leaves degrade over a certain amount of time? I'm asking for the purpose of buying tea in bulk. Do you need to use up the tea leaves in a certain amount of time? For instance, with my dehydrated herbs, they usually last me about a year and then they aren't as potent. So, what would you tell her?
Sure. So just like herbs, they do degrade over time. When we're talking about like a hard expiration, tea has a shelf life of 24 to 36 months, which is really long,
That's a
for the
long
most
time.
part, right?
Yeah.
But that is heavily dependent on how it is stored. Um,
Okay.
I know I know how pretty it is, and I know a lot of people want to store it in like glass jars.
Yep.
But sunlight's terrible for it. So,
Yeah.
just like coffee, tea should be stored in a cool, dark, dry place, like in an opaque container. And that is going to keep it the longest. That is going to keep it fresh. Only access it really when you need to, or I know a lot of people will sort of portion it out. But the less you open it, the better, because that's the less it's being exposed to air and light. But
Mhm.
yeah, tea should last you about 2 years
Okay.
before
And then does
I
it
mean, it
help?
degrades to the point where you're like, oh, this is not great anymore.
Yeah. Um, and I'm assuming even nutritionally, this is probably true. It's keeping its nutritional content for that amount of time, probably.
Yes, from everything that I've heard
Okay.
from our suppliers, it should pack a punch for 2 years, and then it starts to
Okay.
like knock off a little
Okay. And then I have two different ways that I'll store it. Once I open that bulk bag, I, of course, has a Ziploc
bit.
top on it, but then I will also keep it in one of two different areas. I actually have a airlock kind of canister thing where
Yeah,
the air gets sucked out. So that will, I
that's
assume, keep it much better.
amazing. Yep,
But it's only so big and I have a lot of tea.
right.
So I also have a box that has a really great seal and strong,
Mhm.
handles that go down to keep the seal down. So in my mind, I'm doing an extra good thing. I'm also
That sounds
keeping it in a
excellent.
dark closet.
Yep,
Okay. Okay.
that's
Perfect.
excellent. The beautiful glass jars on your countertop by the window, that is not the best
Yeah.
way to do it. And
Yes.
no fridge or freezer. No fridge or
Oh, I would
freezer.
never even
People
consider doing that, but people do that, huh?
Some people do that. They'll be like, "Oh, if I put it in the freezer, it'll last longer." People do that with coffee. People don't put them in your fridge or freezer. They're
What
both really
happens?
they're porous. So no matter what you're putting it in, there's moisture in there, and any smells.
Mm.
We know freezer smell. It
Oh,
will just
yuck.
absorb right into there, and then you're gonna have
Yuck.
fish stick and
Yeah.
tikka masala flavored tea by accident, and you're
Yeah.
gonna be so sad.
That would be awful because I want my cocoa berry mango to taste like cocoa berry mango. Thank you. Well, that's awesome. That's very good to know. I would never have done it, but now I know I won't do
Yep.
it.
Just in case anybody has the inclination, no fridge, no freezer,
Yes,
cool, dark,
stay
dry place.
away.
Yep.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, Marlena. This has been tons of fun. You've taught me a lot,
Mhm.
and I'm sure the followers, I mean, the listeners are enjoying all of this because who doesn't need more tea in their life? I
Tea
mean,
is the bomb. As I'm drinking, what do I have? Guayusa, and I have raspberry leaf mixed in here right now. So that's what
ooh,
I'm enjoying.
nice, nice. Well, this has been fun. Thank you so much, Marlena. We'll have to do it again.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks. Thanks for listening, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. Marlena is always fun to chat with. And if you have actually any questions for Marlena, I mean, I know you can only cover so much in one podcast episode, so I'm sure there are questions. Feel free to message me over on Instagram or email Michelle at solelyrested.com and we will get you some answers. So thanks for listening, friends. Remember, it's easy to forget how blessed we are to live this life. So enjoy the simple, everyday efforts. It's not easy, but it's a good life.